But first, it feels like Groundhog Day, to be honest, because I cannot for the life of me understand why we have our quarantine hotels smack bang in our biggest cities, right in the middle. I don't understand that when we've got premiers who think that the best way to react when the virus does get out of those quarantine hotels is to shut down the whole city. Now, we saw it already in Melbourne, the virus out of quarantine hotels there, terrible bungling, and the whole city, 5 million people, shut down. More than 800 people still died. Now we see the same circus in Perth, not with the serious consequences, but the whole thing all over again. The virus gets out of a quarantine hotel right in the CBD, heart of the city, and bang. The Premier locks down the whole city and adjoining regions, nearly 2 million people. Businesses shut for the rest of the week. And all this because just one worker, a single security guard of the hotel, got the virus. And Premier Mark McGowan today admitted that this guard had in fact passed it on to no one that they've so far found.
Overnight, Western Australia has recorded no further local cases of COVID-19. In total, 13 close contacts have now tested negative. Now,
there's plenty we could say about this fiasco, this total fiasco. First, of course, these hotels, virtually the only way that the virus can get out, this quarantine hotel. So how did this guard get infected? I mean, it's too slack. They're having a police investigation into that. Second, why on earth did it take until just a few days ago, too late of course, for this government to test those quarantine hotel staff daily to make sure they weren't walking around sick without knowing it and infecting people? Three, this sick guy also was a rideshare driver. I mean, for heaven's sake, why is the WA government letting staff at quarantine hotels hold another job that could make them a super spreader? Basic stuff. So stupid. Although it does seem that this guy thankfully did not drive people in the couple of days he was sick and didn't know it. Fourth, I mean, there's a whole list of stupid things here. Is shutting down a city really the best way to deal with a small outbreak? I mean, what happened to contact tracing backed up with strict quarantine? Now, the New South Wales Premier does try to keep her state open and still fight the virus. She could not believe that Perth was shut down and she refused herself to ban travellers from WA.
It's very difficult going into lockdown for any period of time. It's a scary time, and for businesses and communities and families. We don't know of any community transmission in WA apart from the security guard, and so we're acting according to that risk.
Now, you see, that's why Gladys Berejiklian is Australia's best premier and why Mark McGowan is a goose.
Given the latest incident, a further review of WA's hotel quarantine arrangements, processes and procedures will be undertaken immediately.
For heaven's sake, why does he need an inquiry? All he needs to do is read the findings of the Victorian inquiry into its own quarantine disaster. All the lessons are right there. Or didn't he bother to read it? No, come on. Let's just waste more money on an inquiry just on Western Australia's own, just to make us seem like we're doing something instead of not actually doing what you should have done had you been paying attention. So there's lots of issues there about this Perth farce. But let me go back to the big one. If premiers like McGowan do think that we should handle every virus outbreak from a quarantine hotel by shutting the city down, the whole city, then for heaven's sake, move those hotels out of the city. Put up returned travellers in some small town or some bush facility. The Northern Territory uses an old workers' camp out at Howard Springs, miles out of Darwin. Perfect. So why is this not done in Perth, Sydney, Melbourne, everywhere? You know, the crazy thing is, our politicians 100 years ago, more, they were much smarter about this. They did the obvious. They didn't quarantine people right in the city. In WA, for instance, they built quarantine camps like this one out at Woodman Point. Now it's a recreation centre. Well, why not make it a quarantine centre again? Much safer. But this shutdown exposes a big problem today. with the big speech that our Prime Minister made today to set out his priorities for this year. And I mean this bit where he said, no more big spending and an end to JobKeeper come March. No worries about that. We're all back to work.
You can't run the Australian economy on taxpayers' money forever.
And no, you can't. But here is Morrison's problem. If we have premiers like McGowan in Western Australia or Palaszczuk in Queensland who slam shut their borders, slam shut their cities with the smallest outbreak, we're going to be running this economy on taxpayers' money for a long, long time to come. Now, of course we will. We're going to have to bail out all those poor businesses that people like McGowan and Palaszczuk destroy again and again.